On my YouTube channel, I usually post videos about guns because guns are more safe on YouTube. TikTok doesn't really like guns, so I decided to start posting gun videos on here. And so this video is going to be a little bit different. So today I want to talk about who I affectionately call Armory Grandfather, who was my grandfather. About 6 months ago, he passed away. I originally had this idea for this video years before he passed away, but whenever the time came, things just didn't work out. I was helping out my family clear out his house. It completely slipped my mind. And finally, whenever I remembered and or would have gone around to doing it, it was like 3 or 4 months later. And a 3 or 4 month memorial didn't feel as right. It felt kind of weird, so I decided to wait for 6-month memorial. Today I would like to talk to you about a gun that he gave me that I really shouldn't have gotten. I'm really lucky that I did get. And that gun is his Romanian AK-47, a Wasser 1063. This one particular by Roman Arm Cougar, I believe it is. I know nothing about AKs. All the knowledge that I have comes from Brandon Herrera and like a 5-minute Google search. What I was able to find, one thing that I saw on Reddit is people said, it's an AK good, get AK. But I found a website where someone broke down, was talking about a bunch of different things, like pretty much everything you need to know about Romanian AKs. And the basic rundown was that they're cheap, they're kind of cheaply made, but they're reliable. Finish might not be good, but they'll fire. They're one of the cheapest AKs you can buy that's actually still good. And the only thing that I could really find about, like, problem-wise about the Wasser 1063 is that the magwell, there's some burrs that you want to file off, which my grandfather has had this gun for at least 2 decades, so he's either done that already or the wear and tear has gotten rid of that. And also mentioned that some magazines will be kind of wobbly in the magwell, but other than that, it's a really good gun, I guess. And from my personal experience, I've put about 200 rounds through this, give or take. All of it being steel case, all of it being like the cheapest stuff that I can find. But never had a problem. It's been a good AK to me. And the reason why I say that I was lucky to get this AK is because it was actually supposed to go to one of my cousins, who was a few years older than me. And for like 2+ decades, that cousin talked about, and it was a well-known fact, that this cousin was going to get this AK whenever my grandfather passed. But we grew up, my cousin moved away, moved across the country, and it seemed that he just stopped talking to people. That's what it seemed like, because he was really upset with his dad for many years. But I could be wrong. It could have just been that my mom/dad didn't get a whole lot of information and therefore didn't tell me a whole lot. I kind of forgot about him. Forgot that this AK was supposed to be his. So I would come down, I would visit my grandfather, talk to him, hear some of his amazing stories, and sometimes he'd let me shoot guns. And he let me shoot the AK. It was one of the first guns he let me shoot. Actually, it was the first semi-automatic rifle that wasn't a .22 that I ever shot. So I asked my grandfather, I was like, hey Pat, whenever he passed, can I have the AK? And he agreed. He either forgot that he promised it to my cousin, or he assumed that that cousin was across the country, he's forgotten about it, or something. I'm not entirely sure what, but my grandfather ended up agreeing to it for some reason, and I ended up with the AK. So that added another wrench into the ownership problem, is that I was helping my parents go through the paperwork, his foreign papers, titles, stuff like that, and they found an unofficial will that wasn't dated. So we don't know when he wrote this. From my parents' best guess, it was probably around the time when my grandmother passed away, because he was in a really dark place, and the things that were listed on the will were around that time. It was either things that he doesn't have anymore, or new things that he got a couple years after that happened, he didn't have listed. Like, there's a Harley that he got a few years later that wasn't part of the will. And so within the will, when it was breaking down who got what, it said that the AK was supposed to go to my uncle. So yeah, for 2+ decades, it was promised to my cousin, And then in the unofficial will, it was given to my uncle, and then presumably a decade after that will was written, it was given to me. It shouldn't have worked out for me, but thankfully it did. And whenever it comes to the reliability of this gun, you're just gonna have to trust me, because obviously it's my grandfather's. It means something to me. I'm not gonna do something stupid. There's YouTube. You can look up videos of people firing 1,000 rounds continuously through an AK, or putting just whatever comes into mind, putting cheese down the barrel, shoving a few gummy worms into the action. And since this is a memorial video and not just a video about the AK, I'd like to share some stories about him. It was a tradition for my grandfather to take his grandkids to the hunter safety course. He would take the class along with them, he would take the test, and since he's been hunting for years and has taken several people to the hunter safety course, he would get 100%, he would brag about it, be like, hey look, I got 100%. And so whenever it came time for me, I asked him to take me. I don't know if I asked him too late, or if it slipped his mind, or something, but we ended up missing the deadline. And so, a few days later, he comes up to my parents' house, and he has this. It's a Harrington & Richardson 12-gauge single-shot shotgun. He brings it up, and he's like, hey, look at this, which wasn't uncommon. It was pretty frequent that he would come up to my parents' house and show off a gun, let us shoot it. So I shoot it a few times, go through the handful of ammunition that he brought up. I was like, well thanks Pap, and I'd go to hand it back to him, and he goes, no, that's yours now. And he walks away. Presumably what happened is that he felt bad that he forgot about the hunter safety course, or the day slipped by, so as an apology, he gave me a shotgun. And this was the very first gun that I owned. Another story is my grandfather knew everyone, would talk to everyone. And so my parents joked that he never met a stranger. He knew everybody, that he could go to an island where there was only one other person living there, and they would already know each other. One day, me and my grandfather, we were shooting a 1911. It was a Kimber 1911. Walked down to the end of the field, shot it a few times. As we were coming back, we saw my mom. She was just chilling on the porch, so my grandfather goes up, we're talking to my mom, and here comes the mail woman. So my mom's like, hey, go meet her. She's dropping off a package. Don't make her walk all the way up here. So I walk on down. My grandfather's like, I'll go and join. So he walks along with me. 1911 still in hand. Walk on up. He strikes up a conversation with this woman, and he's just talking to her. I don't even remember what it was about. He's just talking with her. For solid like 30 seconds, he's talking, waving 1911 around a little bit. And then he realizes, oh no, I still have this gun. So he kind of awkwardly and slowly sticks it in his pocket and continues the conversation like nothing happened. Another time, whenever I was visiting my grandfather frequently, pretty much every time I visited, he'd pull out basically every single gun he owned and show it to me, tell me a bunch of stories. Whether or not those stories were true, I don't know. But he would tell me a story about basically every gun that he had. And I was talking to this mutual friend of mine who was a counselor. And somehow, for some reason, I ended up talking to him about this. And he said, well, that just shows you how much your grandfather cared about you. Because whenever you like someone, you want to share things with them. You want to tell them about your hobbies. You want to show them what interests you. So your grandfather pulling out every single one of his guns and telling you all these stories, just showing that he really does care about you. So that warmed my heart. Another story that my parents really like to tell is my grandfather had supernatural luck when it came to gun raffles. He won a bunch of guns through raffles. And one of their favorite stories to tell is my dad had an extra ticket to a raffle. He was going to take my mom, but she couldn't for some reason, so he invited my grandfather. So they go. Organizers decided that they were going to give a gun to, obviously, the winner, but also that ticket in reverse. So if the winning ticket was 1, 2, 3, 4, you'd also give a gun to 4, 3, 2, 1. Naturally, my grandfather wins. But his ticket is the same forward as it is backwards, so he won 2 guns with 1 ticket. And not just that, he didn't even pay for the ticket. He was supposed to pay my dad for it, but he never did. I think about him pretty frequently. And I've mentioned in passing in a TikTok video that I now live in his house, which probably isn't helping matters, but yeah, occasionally I'll just talk to him, apologize for not seeing him more, just whatever is on my heart. And weirdly, I've had a few dreams about him. The recurring theme for these dreams is that he passed away, and then after like a month or so, they managed to bring him back to life. And last night I had a dream about him where, once again, he was brought back to life after like a month, but he passed away again. And I was just crying. I don't remember anything else about the dream. That's the only thing I remember, is that I was crying. A sad tidbit is that before he passed, everyone was thinking about him. I was thinking that I should come over more, talk to him more, shoot some more guns. My mom was thinking about him, was kind of worried because he hadn't went anywhere in a few days. My sister was planning on, my brother-in-law was going to go play pickleball, so my sister was going to make plans to come over and see him, spend the day with him. And even one of my uncles, who doesn't really talk to anyone, but even this one uncle was thinking about him. And only like a day or two later, we found out he passed. So to wrap up this video, I like to read you the short story that I read at the end of his memorial. And I changed his and my grandmother's name in the story for privacy reasons, but anyways. His darkened vision was suddenly filled with bright light, but it didn't hurt. It wasn't blinding. Bill took a second to look around, seeing white fluffy clouds that looked and felt softer than any pillow imaginable. He looked down and felt his chest, only to realize something was different. The loose skin that came with age was now tight and young. As his head was down, hair drooped into sight. Gone was the gray and white that he was accustomed to. It was light brown once again. Bill looked back up and looked around once more. Where am I? What's going on? He asked himself. Then came a familiar voice. I missed you, Billy. He turned to see a golden gate with an elaborate golden fence, and someone approaching him. A beautiful woman with strawberry blonde hair. The same strawberry blonde he fell in love with many years ago. She was just as, if not more beautiful than when he first met her. Where am I, Sally? He asked. Am I? She slowly nodded and embraced him. You are, she said softly before she pulled back and grabbed his hand. Come on, there's some people I want you to meet. She pulled, slowly leading him through the gates. You're going to love it here.